pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, approval of our minutes from our previous town board meeting of July 5th. Motion by Mr. Gibbons, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Martin. Is there any discussion? All in favor, signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carried. Okay, public hearing, we're just gonna keep that open.
We gotta open it, we gotta open it.
Okay, I need a motion to open the public hearing.
And move that we open the meeting.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second. Second. Second by Mr. Montrose. Mr. Bruskevich.
Aye.
Mr. Gibbons.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Montrose. Aye. And I'm an aye. Okay, the public hearing is open. Is anybody here to speak for or against the Clear Path Skyridge Water District? Yes, sir.
I'd like to speak in favor of it. I support it. And, you know, in view of this massive Micron industrial development coming just 15 miles down Route 31, and it's coming this decade, I ask if you have partnered with the Madison County Planning Department to determine the current sewer capacity, and then for planning to determine what's our anticipated sewer needs in the future. So outstanding job so far, and wanted to just put that bug in your ear as my note of support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna leave that open until first meeting.
Correct. Yep.
All right.
Can I just,
Oh, yeah, Ken.
so, as John mentioned, the WIA application deadline's been extended from what was next Friday, the 28th, until August 11th, as a result of some of the heavy rains and flooding that's going on. The governor's extended that. I did talk to Tim Ferteschi, who is Manley's attorney. They had a public hearing last Wednesday, the 12th, for both the 202B, which is Skyridge Water District improvements, and then the 12A, as you're doing here for the parallel Clear Path Water District, Skyridge Extension 1. Tim indicated that they did walk through each of the Part 2 seeker items and made a determination of no significant impact. So if that.
When did they do that?
Last Wednesday, the 12th.
Oh, I thought they hadn't completed secret.
They hadn't until I called Tim, I think after we spoke, to catch up on, hey,
They
we're
ended
having
up
a
doing it.
hearing.
Oh,
Because.
well, we can approve this then, but we just tabled it. Oh, no, do we do vote on it?
We can table it.
Oh, good.
We can
Yay,
close it.
okay, good. You can either do it in an August meeting or you can do it now, it's up
So,
to you.
go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so that changes things. When I did last talk to John, everything as I understood it, we were assisting with preparing part 2. Tim again confirmed that he had gone through that with the board, so seeker should, or was completed.
We're positive, right, that it was voted on for a negative declaration. I just don't want us to do this and find out it wasn't a negative deck for some reason. Because I've gone through part 2s before, and then for whatever reason they
All
voted
right,
on that.
so you raised, that raises a good point in that Monday, this past Monday was the end of the 30-day comment. So.
They should not,
They probably have-
they should not have
they have
approved
not
it.
made-
The 30 days hadn't run unless, one caveat, every one of those agencies involved or interested that they notified wrote back and said, we don't care. And then you can jump in front of the 30 days. And I don't know if they did that or
They
not.
have not notified me of that.
So if they accidentally did that, I would probably tell the town and redo it at the next meeting or something. So I guess I'm gonna hold pat with my advice unless we know. You know, we're in the same place,
It's
right?
not
We're
gonna
gonna be
hurt
fine.
anything to be
Yeah.
until August.
Yeah, there's no gain, there's potential loss there.
So that goes to the August 2nd.
So that'll be on the agenda. So there was a motion, who was the motion again? Did we close the public hearing?
You have.
No.
Yeah, we're not closed the public hearing.
Oh, no, yeah, you could,
So
but
we
you
don't
don't,
need
you
another?
could close the public hearing, but you don't need to, you can leave it open.
We'll close it for the next meeting.
Okay, so leave it in open, got it.
Okay, next we have approved Mike Beardsley to attend the EPHNYS Fall Conference in September in Ithaca. Motion for that, please. So moved. Motion by Mr. Bruskevich, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Martin. Is there any discussion?
Does a great job.
All in favor, signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Okay, next we have, Mayor Elizabeth here, discussion.
So I wanted to let you guys know what we are doing and see if the town wants to piggyback again. The local waterfront development plan that Madison County is working on is near completion. So the village, working with the Canal Boat Museum, is once again going after a grant to do a master plan for the whole canal side area, the Chittenango Landing area. So this is a community/economic development project. If you recall, during the first years of COVID, we had SUNY ESF come in, and with the idea of a pocket community, if you remember the reimagining the canal winning project that Madison County Planning did, but that whole commercial mixed use kind of thing. The SUNY ESF master's students developed concepts on how to develop that whole area from Chittenango Creek, probably to Batdorf's property along the Erie Canal, mostly on the southern side, but also encompassing the area that the Canal Museum has received interest from the Buttons, where the actual original Erie Canal is, the one that is only about 4 feet wide. So after last year's grant application process, we sat down with DOS and they said we missed it by half a point. We had full points from Central New York Regional Economic Development Council, which is really good. So they're buying into this idea of us developing the old Erie Canal, bringing people, more people to live there, more people to visit, which is good for our businesses, which is good for everything. But what they said that they had wanted was more ready-to-build implementable projects, because we had stuff ready to go. So we've sat down with Madison County Planning, we've sat down with DOS, sat down with the Canal Museum, and we're going to go after the same master plan money to bring in a consultant, come up with a plan for the next 30 years, but also to finally install the kayak boat launches that have been planned there for a couple of years. So there's 2 planned at the Canal Boat Museum, one in the Chittenango Feeder Canal, which is ready to go minus SHPO sign-off, which honestly I'm probably just going to piggyback on the Phase 3 creek walk. There's an ADA one that's designed and planned, and these are designed and planned by Corey Jenner of Appel Osborne, which some of you know very well. He did it pro bono. That one's more expensive because it's ADA, it requires a walk, some slope. And then the village is finally going to install what is not a makeshift kayak launch, but the real floating kayak launch. And that's consistent with another grant-funded project that Madison County had done several years ago, which was to get designs for kayak launches along the old Erie Canal, because people really do want to kayak on it. I know it seems hard right now, thinking there's not always water in it, but I think we're months away from getting the Chittenango Feeder Canal opened up. We've had the engineers out, Canal Corporation is on board. They're going to send out people to clean it up and to actually fix the weir gate. So we're months from getting the water in, and so we thought this was going to be that implementable project. We have sign off from DOS, parks, canals, county planning. So I just wanted to see if you guys wanted to be a partner again. Co-applicants. So I gave you the resolution that you passed last year and the details of the grant. So I'm looking at numbers wise, and it's a 25-75% match, which is really why this is a nice grant program. So we're looking at $75,000, $80,000 for the master plan, because that's straight up consulting. And then we're looking at another $175,000 for all 3 kayak launches. So the village will be committing cash, some of our Oneida Indian Nation money that we've set aside for this project, and for DPW forced labor. The Canal Museum has a pot of money set aside for a kayak launch, but it's compared to, you know, some of the other numbers I'm talking, it's not negligible, but 25% match, so we can also use volunteer labor, administrative costs. I mean, there's a lot of match that isn't cash. So, what we did last year is I presented it as an application done as with a co-applicant of the town of Sullivan. They like to know that we're on board, but
You get more points as a co-applicant.
they do. The more people you have on board, the more, I mean, we maxed out last year on showing collaboration and support for the project. So I wanna make sure that we get all those points again this year. We also got full points last year for being a viable financial project because we knew where all the money was coming from and who was putting up everything. The addition of the boat launch is a bit more cash heavy, but you know, I stack away the United Indian Nation money for this type of community development projects. So,
Can't the two kayak launches be one, like a handicap and regular one?
the thought behind the design at the museum for the two was because like this last boat float, I mean, that was just the first year getting back and they still had a couple of, on a bad day, they had a couple of hundred people. So trying to get people in and out. But the cheaper one, the non-ADA one, that's planned for the Chittenango Landing is very simple. It's the cheapest one. That can come out when there's not an event or whatever and everybody can use the main one. But it's to make sure there's enough access to the water for when we do these big type boat float type things. But before COVID, the last boat float we had, people were coming out at the Villages kayak launch and at both locations on the Canal Museum. We'd like to get back to those numbers. We'd like to have more events along those lines because that, you know, that's the thing that draws visitors. One of those things that draws visitors to us is, and you know, I mean, the Canal Corporation is invested into the kayaking there because they donated West Rotary. But a lot of the kayaks that you see at the Canal Museum that you can borrow and rent, the problem is coming out of COVID, we have no water in the canal. I mean, so that's kind of been my priority. So it hasn't been as enticing, but if you get back to those years before COVID when we had a lot of rain, you know, and people weren't falling into the kayak or out of their kayak, you were there for that?
I heard about that.
So that's kind of where we're going with it. You know, your resolution last year committed $5,000, or not to exceed $5,000. I left it open. We're gonna apply. It would be nice to have the town on board and committed, just because so much of that area is town property, because we have that weird, it goes in and out the property, you know, the jurisdiction does, so.
Does anybody have any questions over here?
So are you asking us to approve this resolution?
Well, you gotta pick a number,
Pick a number.
pick a number.
I like that.
So-
I'd like 10, but I'll take whatever. And then,
That's what I'm asking, what are you looking for?
Yeah, exactly. What's the number?
so,
So same resolution, today's date, and $10,000.
No.
Stay here your life, isn't it, Dave?
Inflation.
inflation, yes, but also trying to get that extra half a point by doing what the state tells us to do. So, but ultimately, the master plan puts us in place to go after the big money that Rochester and Elmira got through the LWRP this year, which was in the $3 to $4 million range. So that's when we really truly developed that whole area. This is pittance compared to what we can really do over there. So,
I look at that land, I'm like, it looks like a lot of mitigation is gonna have to occur, a lot of storm systems are gonna have to be put in to develop that area. It's a very wet area.
thus,
You know.
yeah,
So I'm like, ugh,
so
this is not gonna be cheap.
that's the inflation on the master plan.
Oh, yeah. No, we're very aware, we have
So,
a park, so.
but we'll be finishing the Creek Walk Phase 3 this year. Nelson should be starting it next week, so we'll actually have that last thoroughfare, and so, you know, this takes it to the next level. People, you know, people will wanna live in the area. I mean, that's what the Reimagining Canals program showed. They'll want commercial, and I'll tell you, the Powell Lacrosse brothers, they are bringing in people like crazy with their own branding that has nothing to do with the canal, they just like the building. So they're doing, the second weekend of August, they're doing another one of their lacrosse clinics, and so they'll bring people in from all over the Northeast. So they like that Stooks Park area, but we haven't done anything with Stooks Park in years, so.
And Mr. Plyger,
You gonna do it again?
I don't think we don't not want to do.
I was gonna say,
We got no, come on.
yeah, I'll move that we
Yeah.
we re-up our support for this application and we change it to $10,000.
And if for some reason we don't get it, you don't have to pay anything.
Motion-
But we're gonna get
You're
it this
gonna get it. You're
time.
gonna get it.
Motion's been made, seconded by Mr. Gibbons. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, accepting zoning board applications due to the resignation of Cliff Reels. We'll ask that they submit their name, how long they've lived in the town, and their qualifications, and we'll look for them for the August 2nd meeting also. So we'll put that both on our Facebook page and our website. Okay, also there'll be a outreach meeting, in the community room at the library on the 25th from 6 to 7 on the landfill, on the privatization of the landfill. Basically, it's just gonna explain, the process and, keeping the transfer stations open. Most likely what'll happen is the transfer station in Sullivan will go from 2 days down to 1 day. Like the others in Hamilton and at the main landfill.
That's July 25th,
Yes, sir.
6 to 7.
6 to 7, yep. Okay. Budget modifications, firefighter applications. Ken, you wanna just go over briefly, what you've got? Briefly, and then
Respectfully submitted. Amendment number 4.
Is this what we already got?
Yep.
So, again, apologies for the lateness. This is something that we had discussed with John and Beth when Taylor was still with us, and Chris and myself. As you know, there were some issues with construction and extended period of construction of the Sleepy Hollow Water District. Invoicing that we had last done for the town dates back to services June of 22. And then beyond that, we've itemized some of the general services that were provided through June and July, August and September, and October 22 through May of 23. So there's a budget summary here for the project, along with the maximum amount that is identified, or is the amount of the loan through EFC, that's included in this table. So we had discussed with John that the additional services would fall within the remaining budget for the district. So we are here requesting consideration of an amendment to recover the charges, which are itemized on 6 or 7 pages that are attached on the budget table. So please take some time to review that, review the itemized charges, and give me a call with any questions. I'll be back to the meeting.
Okay.
John, like to suggest we go into, I'd like advice of counsel on this. If we go into executive session.
Right now, or do you wanna
No,
wait
at
till
the
the
end, at the end, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, actually I do.
So if you recall at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about what's going on at the Lake Street Gym.
Right.
And one of the considerations that I asked you to ponder was, did we wanna consider a pilot to cover some of the lease costs, or just get into some type of an agreement? So unfortunately for the owner, he needs to know soon, because he needs to either get into a pilot involvement with the town, or we just let him continue with his current pilot scenario with IDEA. Either way is fine. I think we kind of talked the pluses and the minuses.
I thought we were kinda leaning towards the fee.
Again, this is a board, so
Because it was cleaner.
it's cleaner. I think, but we didn't state it. Is that where we're going to indicate, so he knows which direction to
The
move?
total cost could be the same anyway.
The costs or the costs? So the lease is just a matter of, did we wanna melt, put some of that into a pilot to help reduce cash costs, but at the end of the day, it really isn't gonna make any difference. There are pluses and minuses on both sides.
Well, there's a lot of paperwork when you do a pilot, that goes against your 2% tax cap, and fiscal stress and all that.
Then my suggestion is that we would just accept we'll pursue a final lease or a sublease. We're looking into that, with the town.
Okay, so
So-
let's make a motion, get it submitted then.
So I'm gonna move that we strictly go with a lease. We don't consider a pilot for, investing or covering some of the costs of the Lake Street gym rental.
Okay. So Mr. Martin's made that motion, do I have a second?
Second, yeah.
Second by Mr. Gibbons, is there any discussion?
I'll work on language for a lease.
Yeah, we're working on the language with the lease. It shouldn't be much different realistically than what the schools expect.
Right, exactly.
Should be almost identical. We're just gonna make sure that the town, if there's any nuances, that we get that covered. John and I have started to look at that, because I happen to be familiar with both entities, so it works out well, and I can tweak a little bit of these things.
Anybody else have anything? Yes, sir.
To vote on it.
Well, hey,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
you gotta vote on it. Okay, so any other discussion? All in favor signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, AR, go ahead.
as you know, we're perfectly placed in Madison County and especially in Sutherland Town to attract a large share of the expansion business and spinoff from this massive industrial development micro just 15 miles down the road. And I just wanted to ask if you're working with Madison planning to not only look at our current sewer capacity, but our anticipated sewer capacity, and then further to look at maybe we need to go beyond the current business park for business park expansion, other needs in the next decade, because that's really the start. We should be looking 2 decades down the road, and then maybe do a current residential inventory for single and multifamily homes right here, and then what is the anticipated need, because it's a massive thing, and I just wonder if maybe we should start to have a standard item on the agenda for Sullivan Township, and certainly for Madison County, for that purpose. So that's what I wanted.
We have the lot inventory, I told you that, we have the lot inventory. There is capacity at the sewer plant, they just put a $40 million upgrade on that down to the beach. The rest of it, we're working on it, all the rest of it, so it's all in flux. Okay, motion to go into executive session for advice of council.
So, second.
Motion by Mr. Gibbons, second by Mr. Martin, all in favor signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Did we anticipate this taking any action?
No.
So no action.
Thank you.
Oh,
I gotta run into Jerry's office and grab some, unless everybody others.